Good evening, I'm Saul Saenz, and this is ABC 7 Extra. 11 days ago, the nation witnessed what has been widely reported as the siege on the nation's capital. Thousands of men and women storming the People's House. It happened as federal lawmakers gathered in House chambers to certify the Electoral College vote, declaring Joe Biden the winner of the presidential election. Not far from the Capitol, President Donald Trump addressed a crowd of thousands of supporters claiming once again that the election was stolen from him, that the election was rigged, and he had actually won by a landslide. Trump urged the crowd to march to the Capitol, even promised he would join them. But the crowd didn't just walk to the Capitol, it stormed it. 5 people were killed, one of them a Capitol police officer, another a female Air Force veteran. The storming of the Capitol was widely reported as being incited by President Donald Trump. This led to the president's second impeachment, saying he incited an insurrection against the nation's capital. History was made within the span of 10 days. Our nation's capital has never been violently breached in modern times, and this is the first time a president of the United States was impeached twice. I want to show you a part of the President Trump's speech lawmakers pointed to in order to impeach the president.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol because you'll never take back our country with weakness.
My first guest believes there's more to this story, that Trump supporters were not alone in storming the Capitol, that they were actually infiltrated by a group called Antifa, short for anti-fascist. Antifa is considered a left-wing political movement. Please welcome NMSU Professor David Clements. Professor Clements released a YouTube video that so far has more than 19,000 views. The video shows what he claims is evidence regarding the siege on the Capitol, who was involved, what led to the incident, and an attempt to disenfranchise or silence a large group of people. My second guest is a blogger who takes issue with some of the claims presented by Professor Clements. Please welcome Jaime Abeitia. I'll start with you first, Professor. Can you outline more or less what your YouTube video outlines as the arguments, or at least your claims?
Well, sure. I mean, the first thing that I would note is that the First Amendment is under attack. Free speech is under attack. And part of the frustration that I have is that folks like myself don't trust the media right now. And my video is on trial. It's not at 19,000 views right now. It's actually at about 27,000 views and counting.
Point of clarification.
And that there's a reason for that, because people are wary of what they're being spoon-fed. So some people are drawing attention to my video. That's fine. I would remind the media that it's the media that's on trial right now. And when you look at 70,000 Twitter accounts being taken down, millions of Facebook accounts being taken down, Parler, the only competitor that's out there to Twitter, being taken down. We've never seen anything like this. And so my objection was that there was a giant rush to judgment about who incited the riot. Right now, investigative authorities are saying that it was planned. Well, you can't instigate something in an impromptu fashion and also have something planned from weeks out. And it's important to note that the president doesn't dictate what the police do at the Capitol. So we have these two different competing theories as to what happened. And my caution to the president of my university was to not rush to judgment. And the reason why I told him not to rush to judgment is that there is no way. I know exactly what happened, but neither does he. And that's born out of my experience as a prosecutor. I prosecuted first-degree murder cases. I prosecuted attempted murder cases. You don't have a conclusion within 3 hours. And so my request to the president was to calm these things down, because right now faculty members took hold of what he said, and they're equating 75 million voters as far-right racist, far-right insurrectionists, people that are treasonous. And we have state legislators in our state that have called for Trump supporters to be branded with an S. Mm-hmm. That's the climate that I'm in. In fact, we also have Harvard students now calling for anyone that supported Trump in the election to have their degree canceled, rescinded. So this isn't about Trump. This is about free speech. And as an independent voter, someone who didn't vote for Trump in 2016, as someone who has problems with all the political parties, this is troubling. This is troubling. And the reason why I feel vindicated by the video that I put out there is that I cannot describe to you how many hundreds of emails I've gotten from faculty members, from students, and they feel that suppression.
Okay.
And so I feel compelled to speak because I love my students. I care about my students. And I'm pushing back against this narrative that there was an attempt by Trump supporters to set up a dictatorship. As someone who's in law enforcement, you don't set up a dictatorship with a guy wearing a buffalo hat, not using a gun, where police are removing barriers and letting them have entry into the building. Were there Trump supporters there that got caught up? Absolutely.
You're referring to the QAnon shaman. I'm going to turn to Jaime Abeitia. Your response to the professor's claims?
Well, I think it's important to always, in any conversation involving politics, to maintain some sort of footing in reality and in facts. So let's talk about some realities. The reality is the media isn't on trial. The reality is President Trump is on trial and for his second impeachment. That's the reality. Sure, President Trump doesn't control the police, but you know he does control all of those people that he invited to Washington who showed up at his invitation to and then followed his coaxing and that of his supporters to conduct the acts that they did. I'm a veteran. I was shocked and surprised to see the Capitol that I've always admired being breached for the first time since the War of 1812. And the folks that are on the right are acting like, oh, it was just loitering, or it's just, or worse, making the equivalency to the riots that were happening over the summer. Those demonstrations were people that were demonstrating against generations of systemic inequities. The folks in DC were attempting a coup because they didn't like the results of an election. And I think that that's really important for us to understand. And I'll quote the good professor here. Because there's a lot of gaslighting going on. A lot of folks telling us, you know, it wasn't an insurrection. It wasn't an act of treason. We're all imagining it. Or their latest big boogeyman for everything. It was QAnon, or it was Antifa. But the reality is this, and I'll quote you, Professor. I know what I saw with my own eyes. You said that in your video. Everyone out here that has seen and watched what transpired at the Capitol last Wednesday, they too know what they saw with their own eyes.
Okay, we're going to continue.
What we saw was a group of paramilitary, and sure, there was Buffalo Headman, but there was also, groups of men, paramilitary forces that had tactical gear and restraints. Those were Trump supporters.
Yeah, Mr. Abeitia and Dr. Clements and Professor Clements, we're going to continue the conversation.
On a BLM activist,
Professor,
a BLM activist that was arrested and charged, and he was one of the people there. So you're rushing to judgment. You don't have those facts.
Yeah, Professor and Jaime, we're going to continue the conversation, but we're going to take a really quick break. You're watching ABC 7 Extra. When we come back, pro-Trump supporters call it the big steal. They believe President Trump's claims the election was rigged and stolen from him. Professor Clements says he has evidence to support claims that would have at least asked an impartial jury to view documents which point to voter fraud. You're watching ABC 7 Extra, where news comes first.
Saving up to 35% on brand name furniture and mattresses is really something. But through Monday at Household Furniture, we're making it even better by adding nothing. A whole lot of nothing. Like interest charges for 1 year, 0. Down payment, zip. And delivery charges, nada. Up to 35% off store-wide with no interest, no down payment, and no delivery charges. Now that's something. Through Monday at Household Furniture.
2021 just got bigger at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso, with bigger incentives and bigger savings on hundreds of new Hyundais. Kick off 2021 with a new Hyundai with 0% APR for 72 months plus $1,000 bonus cash. You'll save thousands with 0% financing for 72 months. And new 2021 Konas and 2021 Sonatas. Your choice, $199 a month. New year, bigger savings at Oscar Leaser's Hyundai of El Paso.
Great American Steakburger is El Paso's original steakburger restaurant, providing outstanding food and service based on the tradition of our founders since 1985. Our two locations on the east side at Yarborough and Maltwood and on the west side at Mesa Hills near Sunland Park Mall have on-site, hand-cut, aged choice steaks, as well as an amazing selection of delicious seafood and, of course, our signature steakburgers. Dine in our family-friendly atmosphere or order to go and enjoy your favorite meal at home. Enjoy your next meal out with the Great American Steakburger family, El Paso owned and operated for over 35 years.
Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra. Trump supporters say President Trump was exercising his freedom of speech when he told supporters on January 6th to march to the Capitol. They say other lawmakers have used the same rhetoric before when defending Black Lives Matter and were never called out on it. Here's an example.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
That was Representative Maxine Waters back in the summer. I also want to welcome back NMSU Professor David Clements and Jaime Abetia. Sorry, I interrupted you, Professor, when you started responding to some of the claims that Mr. Abetia was making. You want to pick up where you left off?
I do. I will agree with Mr. Abetia that there is a false equivalency, and it's this, is that the riots that occurred over the summer were far worse than what we saw. Far worse. When you look at property damage, hundreds of millions of dollars, the lives that were lost, the businesses that were destroyed, they're not the same. And I'll agree with you there, but they were far worse. And the silence that we have suffered as a nation, as we've seen law and order absolutely been run amok, has led to this event. So I think we can lock arms and plead for a lack of violence, that we could plead for a scenario where we don't have people practicing lawlessness. But let's not pretend that this started on the 6th. It has been modeled and affirmed by those that support or are silent about Antifa and BLM. And that's just a fact.
I prefer we lock arms around the truth. I mean, just a moment ago, you indicated that that I don't know that one of the folks that had tactical gear and restraints was a Trump supporter. In fact, Larry Brock, who is a retired lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, has been arrested and indicated he was a Trump supporter. So I think it's really important that we root this conversation in fact. And the fact is, he was a Trump supporter. He had restraints and tactical gear. And the idea that the riots that happened over the summer is somehow worse than a group of people who are essentially playing Trump cosplay decided they wanted to breach the Capitol, our Capitol building. That didn't happen in the summer. No one in the summer breached our Capitol with the intent to stop a constitutionally mandated function. That's what happened. Those folks had the intent of stopping a constitutionally mandated function and then have the nerve to turn around and call themselves patriots or constitutionalists. I find that offensive as an American.
Professor, I find it offensive, and I find it offensive that people would throw Molotov cocktails at a courthouse in Portland. You can say what you want, but right now, even CNN is reporting that BLM agitators were there, and they've been arrested and charged. So that doesn't fit nicely into the narrative. And when you take the videos that you're looking at, they are cherry-picked, they are edited. The videos that I put up there speak for themselves. And that's what I'm asking for is
so those videos were cherry-picked?
I don't need you to make up my mind for me. What I'm telling folks out there is go to BitChute, go to these websites, because these videos that you're talking about are being flagged and taken down left and right with a suppression effort that's never been seen before.
Professor and Mr. Abetia.
And if you believe in the First Amendment, if you believe in free speech, you should stop telling people what to think, but rather Let them think for themselves.
Professor, let's turn to the evidence that you say you have during your video in reference to the election that judges are refusing to hear. You say you have 500 documents of evidence that will at least prove, or at least shine some light on whether or not the election was rigged or stolen.
Yes, I have access to court filings, 574 pages of sworn affidavits from those who are watching the polls. Both Democrats, independents have no dog in this fight. Forensic reports, I have sworn documents, and these are court filings. These exist in courts around the United States. They've been compiled into one place. In fact, I had Facebook take them down. Google Drive took them down. These are a matter of public record. So now that I have them in a secured location, people can contact me and ask for that evidence, and I'll be happy to provide it. The reason why those courts didn't hear about that evidence is because they declined to hear the case based on grounds for standing, legal standing, or because the challenges that were made had to deal with that people were sued, or these elections were sued over the fact that law wasn't being followed in their own respective states. And so what the judges uniformly said is, go back to your legislature, go back to the government, have them call for a special session. But we're not going to give you a legal remedy here when you have a political remedy. And so they punted. But that has nothing to do with the veracity of evidence. And I'll tell you this right now, as a trial attorney who's tried well over 100 jury trials, who's prosecuted thousands of cases, I know relevant evidence when I see it. I know credible evidence when I see it. And there have been tens of thousands of people that have come forward that have sworn under oath, and they risk perjury. And they don't get anything out of this except for the media's ridicule or podcasters' ridicule.
Let's get Mr. Abate.
And what people are doing right now is they're looking at stories that are heavily editorialized instead of listening to these people themselves. I've spent 70 days educating myself on these lawsuits, these affidavits, these forensic reports. And while I'm not an expert in all things, I know good evidence when I see it.
Okay, let's hear Mr. Abate's response to that.
Well, my response is, I'm certainly not an attorney, nor am I a professor. Truth be told, I have a couple of semesters of community college. But even I know that standing is one of the first hurdles that any court case has to get over in order to be heard. So the idea that that's not somehow that's somehow delegitimizing the decision of the courts is ludicrous. The reality is that there has been systems in place this entire process, and every step of the way, there has been an affirmation of the results of the election. And I think that, again, sticking to facts, Professor, you have a couple of times now, tried to make it seem as though you're not partisan yourself. You ran for Congress or for the United States Senate as a Republican. That is a fact. That's not an opinion. And I only knew that because you said it in your video. So now you're trying to come across as though you're some kind of innocent bystander. You're not taking sides. These are just the facts as you see them, when that is, in fact, empirically untrue.
I'll let you respond to that, Professor Clements, when we come back. We're going to take another break. You're watching ABC 7 Extra. Still ahead, the nation is preparing to inaugurate our next president on January 20th. I'll ask my guests what their hopes are for that day. We'll be back.
When you pay extra for a turbocharged engine, you might feel the need to show it off. But if it comes standard, you might not.
Quick call or come by your Volkswagen dealer today and lease the sporty, driver-inspired 2021 Jetta S for just $199 a month.
Does the perfect family meal exist? We think so. With 9 pieces of battered and breaded chicken, a choice of 2 large sides, and 4 buttery biscuits. Get our Popeyes family bundle for just $21.99.
Love that chicken from Popeyes.
Boom or bust, bull or bear, high or dry. Tough times aren't anything new, but we've gotten through them before, and we'll do it again. COVID put us all in a bad spot, but we've got to get back to work. The whole state depends on us. We have a job to do, and getting tested means getting back to work faster. Get started at togethernm.org/job-to-do.
Start 2021 on the right foot.
Come to Bravo Chevrolet in Las Cruces, where Bravo makes the difference.
That's right, Audie. Come to Bravo Las Cruces and you get immediate savings. This 2020 Chevy Volt you can save over $11,000 on. That's a Bravo deal.
Or get your 2021 Chevy Chevy Silverado and save over $5,000 with your Bravo deals.
El Paso, come to Bravo Las Cruces and get a Bravo deal. It's just a hop away.
Put an end to mealtime mutinies with Long John Silver's family meals. Mix and match chicken and fish and keep everyone happy. Visit longjohnsilvers.com to find pickup and delivery options near you. Long John Silver's, this year.
Your family has a wide range of personalities, and so does ours. Meet the Volkswagen family of SUVs. Click, call, or come by your Volkswagen dealer today and lease the stylish and versatile 2020 Atlas Cross Sport SE Tech for just $369 a month.
Welcome back to ABC 7 Extra Sunday edition. Also want to welcome back my guest, MNSU Professor David Clements and Jaime Abeitia. You want to respond to the claims that Mr. Abeitia made before we went to break, Professor Clements?
I would. I agree with Mr. Abeitia that he doesn't know what standing means and doesn't know the legal definition of it. I agree with that. Standing will only exist when you have a particularized injury. When you have a general injury, as what we've suffered with election fraud, the courts won't entertain it. That's the reason why they won't listen to the case. That had nothing to do with the evidence. They did not look at the evidence. So I'll just state that in response. If there's another question, I'd be happy to.
And yet all the courts, I mean, most of the courts have been kicking out the cases because they lack standing. So I'm not sure how you reconcile the two. But these are courts that are even, these are courts that are overseen by Trump appointed judges. So what motivation do they have to somehow steal an election from you all? There is none. They have absolutely no motivation to do that.
Oh, I think there's plenty of motivation. When you're in politics, fear is a very, very persuasive tool, and no one wants to be the person that peels this back because they know the blowback that's going to occur. And as far as your claim about me being biased, I haven't been in the Republican Party for years. And the race that you're referring to happened in 2013, 2014. And what you omitted was that I actually fought against fraud in my own party. And I fought against folks. So what I'm pro is not pro-Republican Party. I'm pro-truth. I'm pro-integrity. I'm pro-fair elections. And I put my money where my mouth is in that race. So you could try to turn me into this caricature of something that I'm not, but it's simply not true.
Let's move on to the inauguration.
If you don't mind, you've done that yourself.
If you don't mind, let's move on to the inauguration. The inauguration is January 20th. There have been reports that there may be some more riots. What are your best hopes, Professor Clements, for January 20th?
I'm hoping for healing. I'm hoping for civility. I'm hoping for people to be heard and to be able to process unpleasant truths. See, the reason why I posted the video that I did was because when you see suppression, it does the exact opposite. People start losing hope because they can't have the dialogue. They can't have a discussion like we're having right now. And it creates pressure. It creates an environment where there's hopelessness. And what we need is time to freely discuss the facts, have discourse, challenge each other's convictions, challenge each other's evidence. And as a result, we can process it. But instead, what we're seeing is a suppression effort over facts. And the result is we're creating a ticking time bomb. And if we can air out the truth, we can protect the First Amendment, I think we'll see civility. And I think that's what everyone is hoping for.
Mr. Abeitia?
It's at least what I'm hoping for.
I'm glad to hear someone from the right actually talk about protecting the First Amendment. They typically only talk about the Second Amendment. So it's good and refreshing to actually hear that. But I would remind them that, here's the reality. No one is threatening freedom of speech because Trump couldn't handle the user agreement on Twitter. That's what this comes down to. He doesn't have his toy because he couldn't handle his user agreement on Twitter. Now, if I were on the professor's property and I were saying things that he didn't like, he could kick me off of his property because he didn't like what I had to say, but that wouldn't prevent me from going somewhere else and saying it. So he wouldn't be suppressing my speech. Well, that's exactly what Twitter is doing. What I'm hoping for on Election Day is a peaceful expression of patriotism and support for our constitutional republic, and for folks that don't like the outcome of the election to understand that we have a process, a time-honored process, that many of us who served our country are proud of that process and hope that we can continue and try once again to recuperate from the last 4 years and become what a Republican president once said we were, that shining city on a hill.
Professor Clemens, final thoughts?
Final thoughts is that this isn't about the president when it comes to Twitter use. When your big tech companies use these platforms as public utilities and the government takes advantage of that. So we get these notices at the bottom of YouTube on what to think and where to go. We're not talking about private use, like someone coming to my house and doing that. We're talking about certain platforms that have been used by the government, and we're entitled to First Amendment protection. So is the president. And it's insane to think that there's going to be huge blowback by silencing a sitting president and removing him from all platforms. If you think that's going to lead to unity, I respectfully disagree. But I do hope for civility. I do hope for peace. And I pray that we can all treat each other as image bearers of God.
Mr. Abeytia, final thoughts?
I want to believe what the good professor has to say, but I find it very difficult to believe that a group of individuals that align themselves with violent racists could ever sit there and say they really want peace and unity. I mean, the reality is you had, for the first time, it didn't even happen during the Civil War, someone carrying the Confederate flag inside of our Capitol. That should insult every American out there. You had multiple members of that crowd that were wearing paraphernalia belonging to racist organizations. You had some idiot out there wearing a shirt that said Camp Auschwitz. And yet that's who they choose to align themselves with. For years, we have heard the right call those of us on the left a bunch of snowflakes, but I've never seen so many people upset about the fact that their candidate lost and that Trump can't handle his Twitter user agreement.
Okay, gentlemen.
I have to respond to the racism comment if I could.
Go right ahead, sir.
This is, I mean, once again, we're seeing the caricaturing of me. I'm not on the right. I'm right down the middle. In fact, I actually was a state chair for the Gary Johnson presidential campaign some years back. So,
well, libertarians aren't in the middle.
Down the middle as possible. And I try to give nuance as to why I voted for Trump and in the context I did. And I don't apologize for that. But this racism, racially charged rhetoric needs to stop. I'm someone of mixed ancestry. My mother's Hawaiian. My grandmother worked at the Dole Pineapple Factory. Her mother lived in Hawaii when it was turned over at the point of a gun.
Indeed, I'm not but I didn't say it was you. I said that they were there.
Let me finish, please. I'm a child of the trailer park. So when we talk about privilege and we talk about racism, I don't represent that. And what I'm asking for is for folks that are on the left, the extreme left, to stop assigning collective guilt for the actions of a few people and assign collective racism and privilege to them. It needs to stop. It's not true. It's not nuanced. It's low resolution. And that's why people are so upset. And that's probably why right now my video has another 3,000 views.
On that point,
I'm going to have the guy who blamed Antifa for everything.
I'm gonna have to leave it at that.
That's all I said. They're part of it.
I'm going to have to leave it at that. Jaime Abeytia, Professor Clemens, thank you so much for taking time and sharing your thoughts and your views for our viewers. Good night.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sal.
Before we leave, I want to share my views. They are my views and not those of KVIA. Journalism is a fickle craft. While journalists like myself try to achieve objectivity, we're also humans and are not immune by events that unfold in our communities. One of those was the August 3rd massacre, where 24 lives were senselessly murdered. The pandemic, which has claimed more than 1,500 lives in El Paso alone, is another one which touches us all. And the January 6th riot in the nation's capital, where hundreds stormed the Capitol building, killing 5, but also triggered a national debate. Tonight was just a small part of the debate, which will no doubt continue as we move forward to understand the genesis of that riot, and more importantly, how we as a nation can heal and debate the issues in a civil and safe discourse. Thank you for joining us. I'm Saul Saenz, and this has been ABC 7 Extra. Good night y buenas noches.